Hi everyone, it's Andy from Hobby Headquarters. Well, as you guys can see, I've got a very large special project to share with you guys today. And this is the Ryefield Model Panther G late. And this is the full interior version of it. Everything's in here. The engine, the transmission, fighting compartment, driver's compartment, you name it, it's inside this vehicle right here. Now, there is no part count that I could find on the outer portion of the box, but just by looking at the sprues, it's well over 1,000 parts, so quite a bit inside there. I've been looking at it, and many of you may have seen the review I did a little bit earlier on it. It's a beautiful looking kit, very highly detailed. Now, this initial wave of them has a clear hull as well as the clear turret that has been included with it. And that way you can show it off. Not quite sure how I'm going to show it. I want to make it so it's the most amount you can see inside, obviously, if we're going to spend all the time working on it, but still have it look like a tank. I remember you guys may have remembered when I did the King Tiger, we kind of did an exploded view stacked up right there. I want to do something a little bit different. Also, that's a good point I want to point out to you guys too. A lot of times when I'll start off a video, I'll say something to you because I'm planning to go a certain direction. And then when we get to the actual build, it either something is preventing us from doing it that way, or I have to make a change to make the video seem a little bit more interesting, or just different things like that. So please forgive me. Sometimes it's hard to edit out that little piece because it's an integral part of the actual build. But keep in mind, because it's a fluid situation when we're building models, especially something like this. Always so many parts inside of it. But very excited to get it. You know, it's all the Panther kits that are coming out this year. This is the first full interior one that we received, so we're going to start on it, as you can see. So let's get started on it. Okay, to start off, we'll just do a kind of quick review of the entire kit. First of all, as you can see, this box is freaking enormous. It's over 6 inches tall, and comparing it to a regular Tamiya Panther, you can see Tamiya Panther is probably about 1/3 of the size. So it's quite a large piece, and with a large box comes lots and lots of plastic inside. And to start off, this particular kit has all of the upper part of the hull, the turret, and the front plate here, all in clear plastic. So if you decide you want to show it off through that way, you have the ability to do it like that. Okay, what I thought I'd do now is kind of walk you through each little group of sprues that make up this kit. There are 12 sprues in there, as well as some photo etch and decals. And we'll just quickly go over the different things. This is obviously your photo etch sprue that has all of your screens on it, even the springs for the back of the seats, as well as some other pieces on the back, which some of these look like to be forms for when you're putting in the torsion bar suspension. And it looks like there's quite a bit of decals, and those are mostly going to be made up for all the different shells that come inside this kit. Quite a few in there. Now we're going to start to look at the individual sprues themselves. And one thing you'll notice on quite a few of these is that there are some amounts of parts that are slide molded on each one of them. So I'll point that out on each one of them there, but kind of cool to do that. Just saves you a little bit of build time, especially with a kit with this many parts. So you've got some of the parts here, some of the racks, things like that. And this is the first of 2 sprues that are inside the kit. This has all of your shells inside of it, as well as all the pins. And all these pins will pop into the track and get your track to actually work. So you've got 2 of those, and of course a couple of the wheels on it as well. Then we also have some other pieces here. This makes up the engine. I'll kind of zoom in a little bit on that. And it's very, very nicely molded. Some really beautiful detail on the engine here. And here's some more of some of the internal parts, some of the tubing, things like that. Here's some more of those slide molded parts that I was telling you about. And here are some of the external pieces here. And you can see even up here they've done some slide molding. It's just kind of uncommon to see that much slide molding, but it's very, very much appreciated. And then up here, now we have the two different types of mantlets inside. This one has the chin armor on it, and that was to stop a shell from hitting right here and going down inside the engine compartment. That would prevent that. And you can see all of this has been slide molded to give you all that side detail, as well as the muzzle brake. You can see how well that is done up right in there. And even some of the machine guns are all slide molded in there. So that is very, very nice looking. And then we have all of our tools and some like the transmission covers and hooks, things like that. Those all look to be pretty nice. And of course, more slide molding up on the side here. A couple more pieces, some of the internals. Those are the chairs where that little bit of photo etch spring will go behind that. And I think you've got some of the radios, things like that inside here. Then we're going to come up to the hull. Now the hull is made up of multiple pieces, which hasn't been a problem lately. It used to be, have a problem where you couldn't get it all lined up, but all the new kits really go together really well. And then finally, the last two sprues are the identical ones again. This has your torsion bars inside, all of your road wheels, and this kit gives you the option too of making your final road wheel on the vehicle, the steel wheel version. So they have that in there. In fact, there's also one little baggie in here, and then this has got your tow cables, your track cable, and the spring to make the gun barrel actually move. And this is for some of the spare track. You can put the rubber on it, and then of course if you wanted to, chip the rubber up as well. Give it a little bit more beat up type finish to it. So that breaks down all the different sprues that are inside this kit. Of course, the original clear parts that I told you about as well. I'm leaving these in the bag because I don't want any scratches on them until I'm actually ready to make it part of the kit. And the last little thing we'll look at are the bag of tracks. And you can see they do have to be cut off the sprue, or a little runner here, and you get two on each side, but the horns are molded into it, and they are hollow horns, so they're all ready to go as well. So it's just a matter of putting them together and then popping those little pins inside of them, and in theory they should work pretty well. Okay, the kit starts out, they want you to actually start off with the turret as well as the gun, all those portions of the build. And you'll notice right here that the coax is actually slide molded, so that is a hollowed out end on it. What I've decided to do is build up a lot of little sub-assemblies, some basic parts going together, and then just talking about how they fit together. And putting the whole entire gun together here is actually pretty straightforward. There are a lot of pieces, obviously, because the detail is such that it's very, very high. Now, in this portion right here, you are given the option that if you want to put a metal spring inside, that to make the gun recoil. I chose not to, because anytime there's moving parts, you have a little problem sometimes later on with parts, coming apart because they just don't want to fit properly. But everything lines up pretty good here, and you can see how the parts fit in there, that if you do decide to have it move, that will all work pretty well on it. And we're just test fitting out some of the parts right here, and we're going to come back, glue all this together, and show you what it looks like. I'm just gluing in the last little part of our gun build, and obviously this is the muzzle brake. And the muzzle brake, as you saw earlier, is molded with slide molding, so all you had to do was just to glue the front portion on, as well as one of the baffles on the inside. Now here we have the rest of the completed gun, including the little basket right here that will flip up and catch the shell. Now there's about 70 parts that go into making this portion of the gun right here, and as you can see, there's quite a bit of detail on it. Now what I'm going to do is, since we have so much detail and so many parts are built and then going inside other parts, we're going to go ahead and start painting and building and building, painting, and weathering in little sub-assemblies. So I've left off the mantlet, and I've chose the mantlet that has the chin on it, and that weld seam that looks like a parting line is actually supposed to be there, because the other ones were chopped off and then this was welded into place here, so that is correct on it. So we'll paint that dark yellow, but you can see that'll just slide into place here. So since we've got some of our AK off-white, we're going to use this for the interior color on the vehicle. We're going to go ahead and paint all of the internal parts. There are a few parts that are red oxide and a few other little minor colors like around the breech and things like that. Also, there was quite a big
gap in here that I just got done filling a little while ago. I got to do a touch more sanding on it, but there was a little gap right in here, right on the breech, that needed to be filled with a little putty. It was minor, but it might be a little tough getting the rest of the sanding out of there, but I think we can get in there with some nice fine sandpaper. And then of course you can see like the coax in here, so that's got to be painted a different color as well. So I'm going to go ahead and paint it with the AK Off-White, and we'll come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, I just finished up the gun portion of the build, and we painted it, did all the little bit of weathering on it. I actually found a really cool video on YouTube that they were redoing a Panther gun, so they had all the color parts inside, including the little charging handle. They had it as red oxide primer. We did a little bit of a metal effect on the parts of the breech, as well as just a touch on the gun itself, as well as the locking mechanism, just to make things pop up a little bit. We also painted a coat of dark yellow on all the parts that would be the outside of the gun. And finally, I also took the little mesh piece off here. It's very hard to rest this down without knocking it off. So I figured for now it's easier just to leave it as a separate piece, and just when we go to put it in the turret, we will glue it into place and have it all ready to go. So now that we have this done, let's start working on the rest of the turret. Okay, with the gun now assembled, we've started to put together some of the parts that will make up the turret. Now, actually, you're going to get attached to the clear turret. Now, I've been going back and forth about how to display this in a proper way that we can still see all the insides. And the way they've molded this plastic, you can see it is ultra clear, so you can really see quite a bit of the detail as you go through. So I think I am going to use it just clear the way it is. We attach all these very delicate parts. We'll leave these, obviously these are going to be painted first, and then we'll be glued into place here. My only concern about this is getting any type of glue on any clear area that's going to fog it. Normally if it's, you know, regular plastic, we don't have to worry about that at all. So we're going to have to just be extra careful as we attach all these parts. Now also too, on the sides there are like little hooks and things that I think will honestly just get in the way of seeing inside the turret. So I'll probably leave like some of the minor little things off the outside and really concentrate on putting everything on the inside. Now we've also pulled out all the parts that are going to make up the floor of the turret. We've got like started to assemble some of the other parts too. Here's like the motor and a few other pieces, and we've started building all of this up so we can build most of this all as one unit and then paint it all, because this gets painted now the instructions are calling off a gray. I thought it was going to be an off-white like the rest of the inside of an interior, so I'm gonna have to look a little further into that to make sure that gray is proper for that, but probably is. I'm sure they may have done some type of research on it. So I'm going to start assembling more of these little sub-assemblies, and I will come back and show you just before we start gluing them all together. I'm going to start painting up the cupola right now. One thing I wanted to point out to you is they've got this special ring that holds all the clear vision ports. And we're going to leave this portion of the piece out completely while we paint it. Get the whole top painted. We'll slide this into place, glue the bottom on, which sandwiches it in there so we don't have to worry about getting glue on anything. And that way we'll have a nice clear vision port, and we don't have to worry about masking off any of those parts. So let me show you where we are construction-wise. I'm kind of going back and forth. I don't want to bore you guys too much with all the little tiny parts that it takes to build all these, but just to give you an example, between all these little sub-assemblies, the parts that have gone on the turret and this turret floor, we're talking about 160 parts total. So there's quite a bit of little stuff. Now, some of the stuff gets attached up underneath, and a few other pieces haven't been fully attached yet, like some of the vents and things like that. They all kind of come together at once. So we've painted these top pieces, like I said, and have glued them in. I'm still debating, going back and forth, whether I want to leave the entire thing clear or to maybe even just do half so you can look inside and see the other, parts of it. It looks pretty cool. And we, like I was telling you earlier, we have these little sub-assemblies, and with those done now, we can actually start working on this portion of the turret. And by applying the turret ring, the toothed ring in there, we can start putting all those other little pieces and start stacking this together to make it a full turret as it's designed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep doing it as I've been doing it, just working on these little sub-assemblies, showing you all the little intricacies and stuff inside of it, gluing it all together, and then we'll do most of the painting. I've noticed that almost all of this inside stuff is painted a gray color, so it'll be easy just to put everything together and then paint it all gray on the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that up, and we'll come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, here is the completed turret basket. And you can see there's quite a bit going on inside here. Now it'll come time that we're going to go ahead and paint it. And based on the pictures, all of this inside stuff is kind of like a medium gray. And then all of this top portion up here will be the off-white that's normally inside the tank. So I'm going to go ahead and paint that up right now. Well, here we are. We have our turret, I'd say about 95% complete, and I want to kind of just go over with you guys what I've done to it so far. Now, as you can see, we finished off the turret basket with most of the parts. You see there's one more pipe that I need to hook up inside here, as well as some of the chain. The reason I'm not putting that on yet is when handling this piece, there's so many of these little things that can break off easily. That'll be one of the last things I put on. But I have to say, after we've gotten it all put together, I'm very, very impressed with the clear plastic parts. At first I thought I wasn't too sure about them, but after getting them in there, I'm really happy that you can see just about everything you can imagine inside of it there. Now, the only thing I did do is I went back, masked off this little edge right here. We went and painted this the dark yellow, and we'll probably go ahead and camouflage that at a later time too. It was kind of a test. I really like the way it frames out the cover, because all you could see right here was just some clear plastic down there that at the edge looked a little rough and, you know, wasn't always the best looking thing. So I think it turned out great by putting that line of dark yellow. And like I said, we'll go back and put some camouflage on it as well too. But as you can see, you can see every little bit of detail inside there. And it's kind of hard to see. Hopefully maybe you can in here. There are multiple colors of gray. This base right here is actually like a blue gray, and then there's a darker gray in here. Just all different types of things. In pretty good light and in person, you can see it pretty well. Now, as you remember, I did do a little bit of weathering of like the breech and things like that. Didn't want to go overboard, and decided not to do too much more inside of here because I just thought it looked so good the way it was. I'm just going to leave it that way. I just noticed too, I do need to touch up that little weld seam. Actually, I'm going to paint over as well too there. But really like the way this came out. It's a great little piece to kind of show off the inside of your turret. And now we can move on to the rest of the build. Wanted to show you guys a little something. When I was editing the video, I didn't notice it in person, the way it shows up on camera though, but there was a huge injection pin mark right on the side of that little white wall. So I've gone in and added a little ammo pouch. Now I had to reach up inside there with a pair of tweezers with a touch of super glue, and of course right as I did, the thing fell over inside. But I still think it looks better than a big injection mark inside there. Okay, we're going to start working on the lower hull, and in this portion of the build we are gluing on the side sponson to the side of the lower hull. That gets glued into place there, and I'll kind of show you on this one. I've already worked on this one for a little while. All of these little caps are individual pieces, as well as all the springs, and I've just started to I put the springs on this one and still have to put them on here. But I wanted to show you guys what it looks like before and after. So there is quite a few little parts that make up the inside here. And then once we get that all built up, we have the final drive that'll get glued into place here. And I chose the one that did not have the little tiny wheel right here, but rather had the skid. And that little piece right there was the part to keep the track straight as it was going over the drive sprocket. And also, kind of show you this, I've been spending some time, I just got done cutting all of these off, the wheels, the torsion bars, all the sprockets. Now I'm going to go over and do some cleanup sanding on all that. But I thought it was a good idea to get all of this, we'll just call it monotonous work, because there's quite a bit of it together to put together there. I did glue the wheels together with a poly cap inside each one of them. And the reason I like doing that is because when it does come time to sand, you're basically sanding off two little burrs at the same time as you go around on the wheel. So just it speeds up the build a little bit. And as the torsion bars go, like you can see, I started to do some of these. There's a little part right here that needs to be sanded, as well as this end piece right here. And then this one also has it. There's a tiny little burr right there on the long part, so we just sand that off. So not too bad, but there are quite a few of these torsion bars, plus the other side of the torsion bar. So I'll dig one of these out for you guys and show you that one, and that's the bar will come through and plug through on it and lock into place on it. So as you can see, I've got a lot more sanding to do, so I'm going to take care of all of that. And then we're going to go ahead and glue together the lower part of the hull, and you can see there's a little tab that fits right into place here, so you get a proper alignment. And another thing I want to show you guys real close up there too, there's some beautiful weld seam that they've put onto this side of the vehicle, so when you put it together, hopefully we can line it up real quick, you can see it. You'll get a nice weld bead on the outside of the vehicle. Very, very nicely done. So I'm going to go ahead and start gluing together the lower hull, and we'll do some more cleanup sanding on all this, and we'll come back and show you what everything looks like. So here I have painted the inside of the lower hull with a gray, and for this particular job I used XF19. I thought it matched pretty well what the instructions called out. We've also taken and painted all of the torsion bars with X18 semi-gloss black, and we're about to put them in here, and I'm going to show you. Now there's a specific pattern that you need to do. There are two different types, but one thing I've noticed is when you go to put them in that they are a hair too long. In fact, I'm going to show you. I'll put this one in, and you can see that it wants to bow the torsion bar. So these two right here I've taken back out, and we've sanded on this edge, because this side has a pin on it, so you don't want to take that side off, but this side doesn't. So you want to sand this one down, not a lot, but enough that you get the bars to lay straight inside of there. So it might be something just to keep an eye on as you're going forward, putting these pieces in. And then after we get that, we'll be able to go down the line and put the swing arm on it and the other half of the torsion bar. So I'm going to go ahead and put these in. We'll have to sand them all first to get them to fit inside there, and we'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Okay, we have all of the first half of the torsion bars put into place, and I have to say that was quite a bit of work because every one of them needed to be filed down. Now here's another little builder's tip as we go forward on this. I'm going to go in and reinforce each one of them with this small little tip up behind it to make sure that because they're not a lot of meat to grab onto right there. And before you do that though, take your other side of your torsion bar and check every one of these to make sure that it lines up and that it can go through. And you see, if without super gluing it, when you start to push in, there's not much of a bond right there. The super glue is going to hold that so we can push these all the way through. And also, this really shows that if there's any type of burr left on this at all, you really need to file these smooth. In fact, this one has been rubbed on because I've been testing it. So we're going to have to go back and do a little touch-up painting as well as a little touch-up painting in through here, because sanding off the extra pieces of plastic kind of wore down the edge a little bit. But we'll touch all that up. But yeah, just definitely make sure you test each one of these before you glue them into place, because you don't want to have that hole not lined up. This will never fit inside of it. Now I'm at the portion that we need to put some of the floor braces in that go across the bottom right here. Now this particular kit uses photo etch parts to create the floor pan, which, to be quite honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of. First of all, the photo etch is a lot harder to work with than some just real thin pieces of plastic, and honestly I don't think you get any better detail out of the photo etch than you would off of plastic, because most of it's going to get buried underneath anything as well. Plus also, I've painted this up right here, and this is just the middle. You can just see how easy it scratches. Even when you clear coat it, it's still, and even with primers, it still scratches fairly easily. And the other little problem I'm running into right now too is, just like the torsion bars, these braces are a little bit oversized as well. So a lot of them have this little bend point right here that I'm having to go in and just bend it a little bit more and make a little bit more of a flap on it to get it to slide in there, which I had to do over here. And it's tough fitting basically the way it is. Whereas if it had been plastic, we could have just sanded off a little bit easier than messing with the metal. But we're going to work through it here, and we're going to get these pieces glued in next, and we're letting this portion dry before I slide it in. And then these are the final little pieces that go across this way in the pan from front to back, and that'll hold the floor. So most of it's going to get hidden anyway. That's why I think plastic would have probably been a better choice. Before I install any more of the braces in there, we're putting in the other part of the torsion bar, and I kind of wanted to show you. You really have to make sure these are sanded down quite a bit, because if you don't, as you push it in, you have a tendency to want to flex and pop this one right there. Now, that you can take care of by sanding it down. Now it doesn't want to come out. But the other little thing you want to be aware of too is there is a little notch right in here, and there's supposed to be a little corresponding little piece in there, but I can't get it to actually engage that we can get the arm here to be in the right position every time. It still wants to move, like the movable suspension. So looking at the instructions, it looks as though that the little circle part that shoots forward is right at the frame of the lower part of the hull. So that is how I'm going to glue them into place, and hopefully that lines up properly when we put them all in. So just be aware that you might have to sand down this little portion here to get them to slide inside without flexing the other side of the torsion bar. Now we've got this side all engaged, and like I said, I've pushed them all the way in, and it still wants to move. So we'll get those hopefully lined up as best as possible and then glue them into place. Also keep in mind too that the front and back suspension arm is a separate piece. I went and cut them all off thinking they're all the same, or actually forgetting that they're not all the same. And you can kind of tell though, it's got a little extra bolt up on top and a much bigger rib going down the middle. It's definitely a beefier piece, but just keep that in mind. It's a lot easier to try to put them together when you have all the parts separated. Okay, I've been messing with trying to get those final braces through the middle of the vehicle here, and having to take a little break from that right now because it's kind of tough going, especially getting them all to line up properly. But what I thought I would do now is kind of show you some of the other parts I've been working on that are going to fit inside. As you can see, we've dry fitted a few of these springs inside, and that is so next we've got this transmission unit all built up. The transmission unit will pop right into place here. Then we have our set of all of the different pedals that mounts right on top of here. And I would definitely recommend gluing those in after you mount the rest of the piece. This way these arms are not in the way. And we're just going to drop it in here for right now because it's like I said, it's kind of fiddly and we don't want to break anything. We're just kind of showing you how it goes. And before the transmission goes in, these little final drives will go in on both sides, and they're clearly marked. Then plus we start putting in the floor pan as well as the seats. And we've just glued up the back of the seats here. And you can see they've got the spring photo etch inside there. And I just thought I would show you real quick too how easy it is bending up the photo etch with your angled tweezers. So here's a piece that we're going to duplicate from this side of the build. We've got to put one on this side, and it's just as easy as just lining them up with this and bending it over, doing it again, getting it right on your little crease, and like that, and then you have your little part. And we can go ahead and super glue that into place. And there's a bunch of other bracing and stuff. And we'll show you a little bit more as this goes together. Like I said, I was just taking a break from the arms that go inside there. I've got to do some more touch-up painting because every time we put it on there, it would scratch a little bit of the paint off, but not too bad. So I'm going to keep working on some of these auxiliary pieces like the battery boxes right here. We have that; those will all get put into place. But we're going to paint all of this first before we glue it down, and that's why we're just temporarily just showing you how it's going to look inside the base. Okay, you can see we've installed most of the transmission, the driver's compartment, the radio operators, and we use German gray on all of the sub-assemblies that we put inside here. I think it adds a nice contrast to the light gray, the base color that they put in here. Now I've seen lots and lots of different ways of, some of it's red oxide, some of it's this, so I thought I would just take some of the parts and paint them up the red oxide. I think it makes it pop a little better, especially when we're going to go ahead and put the clear parts on. you'll be able to see inside, and a little bit of glint of red I think will look good inside there. Now we also, after we painted everything the German gray, I went over it with my polishing powder just lightly, and hopefully you can see it makes all the little detail pop out quite a bit on it. Now, with this portion of it done, obviously there's still a lot more parts to be done, and we left this part out as well separate, and that is because there's one other drive shaft that's going to come through here, but we want to mate it up to the engine, so we don't want to glue that into place until the engine's in there. We don't want to find out later that it doesn't fit. We also have some floor plates that I just painted up, and here's, I just put one coat of the primer on it here. We're going to paint that a red oxide primer too. I think it adds a little color to it. So I think right now it's a good stopping point for the first video, part 1. We don't want to go too much over a half an hour for each video. The next group of videos will work on the engine, more of the body pieces, and kind of put everything together all at once. So I want to thank you guys as always for watching, and please stay tuned because we have definitely another video coming.